Today's guest is Eli Wilde. Eli has been one of the biggest influencers in the high-ticket space in the world. He's worked with some of the biggest names, including Tony Robbins and Hormozi. He's also had a huge impact on my career in high-ticket selling. Today's chat, it goes deep. It goes to places that you might not expect a podcast about sales to go to. There is so much gold to pull out of today's podcast, so make sure you get the notepad out. Let's get started. Eli Wilde, welcome to Beyond the Close.
Thanks, man. Excited to be here.
You're coming off not much sleep, it sounds.
Yeah, Tony, I just getting plugged back into the Tony Robbins world, and it's such a great energy. And he just did a new program, this RPM, like kind of how he processes everything. And we're supposed to end at 9 o'clock last night, which is a long day, but he went till 2:30 in the morning. And then, so obviously getting home late, and it's so excited to kind of just put some together, my projects and everything. It was cool to see him be in his element. So that was last night, and that was the last 3 days. And then right before that, the previous 3 days in Vegas, watching a close. I like watching masterful presenters speak and close. And this guy is good, not very ethical, so I won't mention his name, but lethal.
Yeah, I've noticed you shift over the years from sort of sales training to more speakers. So you're coaching one to many. So that seems to be where you're headed now at the moment.
Yeah. It's always more exciting. I got into this as a salesperson, and I saw Tony on stage, and I was like, that looks pretty exciting. And I think too, the way the industry's going, Zooms and all of that is great. But with AI, I think there's going to be a premium on in-person experiences. And I mean, I did 2 seminars a day for 10 years. So I did most of my sales in person, but then I followed up on the phone. So I think you need to be a double threat these days as an entrepreneur, have the back end and the front end and all of that. But speaking is a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's facilitating one-to-many. It's powerful. I mean, that's one thing I learned from you back I think it was 2020 when I first went through the course. There was the selling in times of crisis. You had an event, like a masterclass, and then so I jumped into the program after that. And I think one of the key lessons that I took from that was the hierarchy of influence. And so first, to influence another person, we have to influence ourselves first, and that's the foundation. And then moving to one-to-one, and then further to that is the one-to-many. So it seems like it is sort of a higher power of influence once you reach that once you've mastered the one-to-one, you can be really effective at the one-to-many.
Also, it's something called an ascension model, and I did a few of them in that masterclass. I remember, but I'm chunking up. If you're familiar with NLP, I'm chunking up to your purpose, your reason, like who you are in the world. But I say the foundation is who you are. And when I do these events and I do a keynote and I get on some of these big stages, I say, can 2 people have the same script, same product, same offer, same everything, but get very different results? So maybe it's none of that. Maybe it comes down to who you are. And, ultimately, I'm taking people out of the process when I'm speaking on a big stage, because I can't teach objection handling and everything in 90 minutes, but I'm getting them to realize that it's more who they are. And I know what I'm going to sell is a self-development thing, and getting them to access, like, hey, maybe there's something internal. So it's all frames that I'm taking people through that get buy-in. And these are universal truths, but the height of the pinnacle, height of your income, determined by the depth of your foundation,
depth of your roots.
Yeah, who you are. You're rewarded in public for what you practice in private, inside of your own mind, emotions, beliefs, standards. And so let's look there. And it's kind of how I've injected self-development into sales. And I think it's, there's got to be something, as you say, beyond the sale, beyond the script, beyond the, objection handling, beyond all of that, our mission, values, purpose, like why we're actually here, having these conversations with humans, be it one-to-one or one-to-many. That's kind of what I geek out on.
For sure. And I think that's your big point of difference with a lot of the sales trainers out there. And, I think it's common for salespeople to if they're not getting the results, they're not getting the close, they're getting objections, they're getting resistance. It's common for them to think, maybe I need some more rebuttals. Maybe I need some better dialogue. One thing I think that I took away from a lot of your work was a lot of it just comes from internal. 2 people can read the same script, they can have the same questions, they can have the same rebuttals, and they could be selling the same offer with the same leads, but then someone can have 2, 3, 4 times as good results as the rest of the team, which a lot of it comes from that foundation which you teach.
Yeah, 100%. When I started working for Tony, and then eventually started training Tony's sales team and speakers, we all had the same presentation, same script, same offer, same close, same everything. Obviously, some people were better than others, and we would script out in front of each other, like do your presentation in front of the rest of the company. And I would critique everybody, but there were some people like moved, and you knew what they were going to say, but some people not. And we would go see each other present inside of companies, and the critique was always the number one thing, not were you articulate or sharp or say the script well. It's really just thinking like, would I have bought? And sometimes I'd see my friends and I'd be like, you know what, that was good, but I probably wouldn't have bought. And I saw other times where a person was kind of, maybe all over the place a little bit, not a great speaker, but I was like, you know what, I would have bought. And we just began to reverse engineer like what creates that connection and that buy-in. Not speaking or sounding perfect. Of course, there's some vulnerability, some connection, some belief, some caring, this transfer of what's inside of you that you own to another person where they feel it and absorb it and accept it and want to do something with what you've said. Trust. How do we build trust? So yeah,
That's true.
the foundation for all of it.
How do you build trust? I mean, that's something I wanted to ask you today is like, what is the key in the transfer of trust? And I've heard you talk about the trust triad, the trust trinity.
Yeah. Trust trinity.
What is your, I mean, how can someone who's new to sales learn and master this, especially over Zoom or over the phone, where they're able to get trust and get the trust of the product, get the trust of themselves, and also help the prospect trust themselves?
Mm-hmm. Well, with the trust trinity, it's broken down into getting people they need to trust in you, the communicator, or trust in you, the speaker, and that could be your company or you, the individual salesperson. And then there's trust in the process and the product, and they're two different things. Buying into the process or the actual product that delivers, the process that delivers the product. And then the other part is getting people to trust in themselves. And it was interesting in times of stress. There was a speaker that I was breaking down this past week, really amazing. But as there was some distance from the audience, they leaned really into like, hey, I've done this. So they started trying to prove here, I'm worthy, which, you're convincing people to trust you. I've done this, or I've sold 100 million, or I own all these companies. You don't want to do that in the offer. And so there's, you want to assume by the time the offer is there, there's things that people do to break trust. There's things you can do to create trust in you. It's your story and your style. For the company and the individual, it's a little bit different. And then there's the process. But one of the things that I do, and what Tony Robbins does, I assume trust in those things, and I take the focus off of me. So some things, and there's some subtle things with seating and framing that I do that can create that, and it gets the person out of the conversation of, can I even trust this person? I do some things to create that, to assume that, to pull them into it, and then the whole frame of my conversation is getting them to trust in themselves. And if there is any resistance, I assume it's because they don't trust in themselves. When I replaced Hormozi at the gym launch event, and I did the repitch instead of him this year. And at the end, I was pitching the audience pretty hard. I pulled an additional $1 million out of the audience, and I was closing people pretty hard, and they were cheering for me and like clapping. And I told people to stand up, and I walked like 40 people back there to take a $43,000 offer. Not all of them took it, but about 10 of them did on the spot. Actually, like 17 additional people took the offer.
Incredible.
I was closing them pretty hard. But the frame, what I made it mean. So they felt, and I do a lot of what are called best interest frames, where I get people to buy in, even if I'm going to be mean to you. I create the analogy, like if I'm your trainer at the gym, and I push you to do something you don't want to do, it's so you can walk out of here stronger. Are you okay with me doing some things that are make you feel very uncomfortable in the moment, so you can walk out from this conversation or this workout a stronger person for your family and your life? So I'm going to get buy-in. And I frame all the things that might be difficult or you have resistance to, I frame them in your best interest. And if you buy into that frame, now you want me to push you, just like a personal trainer. And I'm get people to create that metaphor in their mind that that's what this is. And I'm pushing them for their best interest, not for mine. And so if they buy into that frame, then they want me to push them. So there's a lot of little things that can happen. But, in getting people to trust in themselves, I assume it. And it's saying things like, well, you deserve this. Your family deserves this. And so people have an internal processing themselves, evaluating themselves. Just because you don't have money doesn't mean that you don't not you can't do this. When you go, say in Sydney or you're in Gold Coast, the majority of those big buildings that you see weren't purchased with the owner's actual money. What do? They went to the bank, they used somebody else's money. And that's what all successful people do. But they bought into it because it made sense, but also they believed in themselves and their ability to actually make the project work.
So with trust, I think you were talking about you get people to buy into not only the product but also themselves. And I heard you say you've got to have words that make sense. So the argument around sort of using credit. So if you've got an option to pay with it using credit, you can use the analogy, or you can use the example of how rich people sort of purchase property. But I think a lot of it is building that belief internally with a prospect. So where does that start? Does that start with the things we say? Does it start with ourselves? Like, just for someone who's sort of picking this up, like, where does that start to help a prospect buy into themselves and believe in themselves that they're capable?
I believe it's, you can't give what you don't possess. And I obviously when I sold something, and I've sold things like when I initially started, I sold dental products, and I didn't know much about dental products, but I believed in the company, believed in the owner, and I think you have to do your research and really believe in what you're saying, because that gets transferred. And people stand on stage or you sell something, you really need to do the internal work and create an association for yourself. Like, why is this so important? And I've done talks where people saw me speak, and for years I was a salesperson selling salespeople that knew I was there to sell, that did not want to be sold to. So as soon as they met me, like, it's interesting now, I speak on audiences and people cheer and they know my name. And that's weird for me, because for 14 years, every single day, I never had a friendly audience. I always had a hostile audience. Audiences, used car lots, places that thought they were going to heckle me. But I'd done thousands of these talks, so I got really good. And I had an hour to get all of people's time, like a week away, hotel, money, event, all their money, all their time. And I had less than an hour to sometimes enroll hundreds of people all at once that had no intention of buying from me. And so I had to have a strong belief. And when people would have a negative belief about me or motivation or whatever I had to sell, I knew, and this is a Tony Robbins or NLP-ism, that when two people meet, the person that's more certain will influence the other person. Now, influence doesn't mean, pushing people, or certainty doesn't mean that you try to bull over them. It's a groundedness. It's a sense of resolve. And when people would meet me with that energy that said, I don't need to hear what you have to say, my internal thought was like, wow, these people really need to hear what I have to say. Like, they really need this. And, even if somebody's negative, I could, after doing so many talks and hearing everything, I could emotionally destroy that person or make that person look bad or make fun of them or belittle them in some way, or I could get the audience on my side and turn against that person and make them look really bad. But then I thought, is that my outcome? So the first thing is like, what do you believe? And another big thing is, what is your outcome? And your outcome can't be just to make a sale. Otherwise, they're going to feel that. But my outcome became, what do I want them thinking, feeling, and believing? And thinking and feeling about me, about the process, but also about themselves, their ability, their capability, their deservedness. And once I hit those targets, and I got them to internally create those beliefs for themselves, I knew that we were about 90% on track, and I could feel it. And so we've got processes around it now, like where do you engage people when they're disconnected? Because that was my process. And I can make somebody feel bad if they were being resistant, or I can make them feel dumb. Kind of like, I won't mention any names, but some speakers do that. If you're broke, they kind of belittle you for not taking care of you. You can't shame people into buying. And you have to make people, I feel, smart, intelligent, resourceful. There's a way that you can do it that still empowers people. And I became obsessed with that. And I saw that's what Tony did. So that became my ethos. But my outcome, which I was really clear on, was to get people to be enrolled in a new possibility. And even if I did, see somebody that was negative or being really mean to me, I could make them feel bad, but I was like, is that my outcome? And I'd always remind myself of that quote by Mother Teresa: all communication is a loving response or a cry for help. And if it's not a loving response that I'm getting, it's obviously the other. And a cry for help doesn't always sound like a cry for help. It could even sound like fuck you, or I don't like you, or I'm fed up, or this is all bullshit. That's also a cry for help. And while you can make that person look bad, is that your goal at the end of the day, to make people look bad? I was like, no, that person's hurting even more. what does that mean when somebody's negative to you? It means they've had bad experiences in the past where their expectations were let down. Maybe they let themselves down. Maybe they were ripped off. Maybe they didn't understand. And now they have a wall around them. And the way to penetrate that wall is with compassion and kindness, and sometimes pattern interrupt, sometimes, using something to throw them off a little bit, but do anything other than, what's, being mean or just falling into their frame. And you get creative with it and it becomes a lot of fun, as opposed to just relying on a script. You have authentic communications and more of you shows up in that moment and you learn and you have fun and it's real and you're engaged in the experience. And that's what I think sales can, influence should be more of, not just reading scripts.
Yeah, agreed. And when I got into closing in 2017, 2018, and then I think I started sort of following your work around 2019. But at that time, it feels like it was the early days of closing. It feels like this high ticket industry, which I know has been around for a long time. Feels like those were the early days, and now it's become a little bit more mainstream, a lot more people doing it. There's a lot more salespeople out there. It's changed a lot. Back in those days, some of the mentors, some of the coaches were, some of the objection handling, the frames and the dialogue for objection handling was, it was sort of looking like shocked that they weren't taking action, and also making them feel bad, or really sort of pinning them to a lower identity, and sort of almost making them feel judged, and making them feel like if they didn't take action, they were a little bitch, and that felt like the lot of the closing coaching at the time. And so I feel things have moved a lot more in the direction where you teach now. I think a lot of, I see a lot less of that at the moment with teaching. I feel like there's a lot more authentic selling. I feel like a lot of buyers are not buying into that at all. And it's selling at such a low level when you're getting to that level, making them, judging them, making the prospect feel like they're, an idiot for not buying. And so I think that's something really authentic that you bring, and potentially have had an impact on a lot of the way that this industry starts to sell.
Yeah, it's been good because a lot of people push, the objection handling stuff, and it's good. I think people need to have that skill. But it's like a lot of the people that become really great at objection handling and focusing on objection handling, it's because they haven't created enough trust. And what they don't mention is the refund rate after that. That's like the main thing. It's just the research says, and Daniel Payne can, and on all the people, but Jordan Belfort was really big on objection handling. I did an event with him a few years ago, and I outsold him because it was, I went into this method and people bought into it. I also did some framing that only he would have seen, kind of deframing what he did in a really elegant way. But he's brilliant. I was actually very impressed with Jordan Belfort. He is a master. And I went to go critique Grant Cardone about a year ago, and his style is not my style, but I'll tell you, one of the better speakers I've ever seen. He was so charismatic. Some people have a thing, like he could pretty much say anything because he's so charismatic and people would agree with it, and nothing against Grant Cardone, but that works for him. Like, can he sell? Yes. Is that a transferable skill?
That's true.
It's like, if somebody's 7 foot tall, they can dunk. Can they teach me? Can they teach me and you, or a 4 foot tall guy tonight? Probably not. And so he's got certain things, and it's a rare gift, and then certain people have something, and you see these really charismatic leaders, but it's not a transferable skill. And, you see a lot of these guys out there that are doing that. But the process is evolved. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I got a thing tomorrow with Taylor Welch. He was a big part for me. I spoke at an event. We connected. I was going to get him some salespeople. We had a sales agency, and his process was great. We developed a friendship. I was going to speak for an hour at one of his events, and I went down there to Dominican and I spoke 12 hours straight. And he was like, "Our brains are full," and I was like, "I'm just warming up." So we developed that sales mentor program. He already had it. I became the face of it, and we developed a friendship, a partnership, and then stuff with Matt Ryder, and I connected Matt and Jeremy Miner. And Jeremy was retired. He'd have no money if it wasn't for me. I wish I had worked myself in a piece of that, but Jeremy's brilliant. I made that connection because I think Jeremy's smart. I think Jeremy's brilliant. And we coach Jeremy one-on-one right now for his speaking. So we've helped him. We've over doubled his close rate, one to many. But I tell you, the meticulousness and how much he trains on every tonality, every pattern, like how he breaks it down internally when he speaks it. Like every sentence comes out of his mouth, he's rehearsed like 100 times. And so for some people that might be extreme, but I tell you, like somebody good to learn from. And people like will, try to shit on other sales trainers and stuff. I'm like, I'll tell you who's good. I'm like, that's pretty good. Can somebody, is that different? Or yeah, Tony does it a certain way. I think Jeremy's more corporate. You see other people out there, there's different styles. So you have to follow who you align with. But I knew that I'd be in this game for a little bit of time, a long time ago. So I was like, I'm going to study everybody best I can, people that I align with. So I've pretty much studied everybody at this point.
For sure, for
That I
sure.
think's good.
Yeah, and I think you're well entrenched in the industry, and you've had a huge impact on it, which is it's now become such a mainstream thing. It's almost like more mainstream than some of the offers, the closes, and just the closing part of the whole business.
Yeah, the industry's changing fast. There's so many people. It is becoming tougher to sell. Just the saturation, less people coming in, more people, more conservative with their dollar right now. So yeah, the industry's going to change. So many people came in so quick, and I remember a couple of years ago, Tony and Dean did uh, that knowledge broker thing, and now it's kind of like so it's become so mainstream, and you notice the chain of beliefs when they have that, and they have all these coaching offers out there now. They first have to sell people on the fact that, hey, you have knowledge and you have experience. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be 3 steps ahead of the class. There's people out there that need what you have. If you have to sell somebody on the fact that they can be a coach, they should not be a coach. If you have to sell somebody on the fact that they have knowledge and expertise, person probably does not have knowledge or expertise. But like, hey, anybody can be a coach. I remember I ran into this girl that I dated a long time ago, and I asked her what she was doing. I won't even mention what she was doing, and she was like just awful what she was doing. And I said, you shouldn't be doing that anymore. Like, what do you want to do? She's like, I think I want to be a life coach. I was like, what are you going to coach people? I was like, why would anybody take life coaching advice from you? Not that she's a bad person or anything, but I was like, this is not being a life, like giving people advice on their life is not something you should fall into as like a default for not doing anything with your life just because you've been reading self-development books for 10 years and doing nothing with it. And a lot of people, fall into sales for that same thing. They're like, because you can make more money in sales than a doctor or a lawyer. And I speak often at an event, with my buddy Bill, and they have this marketing platform for lawyers. And, I helped pitch at it. It's a $78,000 offer. So it's pretty expensive. And we all just figure lawyers just have money. These lawyers, terrible mindset, making 60 grand a year, and just terrible business people, terrible mindset, and just awful. And you think these lawyers, like, and doctors so successful in sales, if you're good, like you can clean up, and it's a transferable skill. I think everybody should sell. I think everybody should wait tables at some point in their life, and I think everybody should sell. Everybody have some kind of service-based jam, because it'll make you more kind when people are serving you, and the resiliency to work in sales for 100% commission. 100%. It just changes your work ethic, like how I show up. It's like all that stuff. I think now in America, at least, I think we should reinstitute the draft, because when you go places like Israel or something, like they have to go into the military, and these are badass people, like women, like everybody goes, people become soft, and when you want to be really great at anything, there's a period where you need military like discipline on your training, on your preparation for the call. And I just think the whole world's becoming soft right now. So
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
in sales and speaking and out,
Well,
it's
think
just it.
I think salespeople it's very easy to sort of draw the parallels between athletes and salespeople, because you get paid on results. Athletes are rewarded on results, on winning, on the outcome, and in sales. And so if you're a commission-only salesperson, how you show up, how much preparation you've put in, how prepared you are, how confident, how certain you are, will have a huge impact on the outcome as well. And then if you haven't been putting the work in, you don't get the result and you don't get paid. And so I think a lot of people are scared of that. But as you said, you can make more money than a doctor and a lawyer. And often if you're going on the commission only, often exponential rewards for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Sales is a great thing. Yeah, it's a great thing. And now things are becoming tougher, and salespeople and industries do need to be more competitive. We've got a few things in the pipeline that we're doing, because we had the sales training stuff. And when I talked to Taylor about it, Cole, Gordon's a good friend. And when I talked to Hormozi for the first time, we hopped on a few calls. He suggested, either I niche down or take over speaking. And so that's why we've niched down, more to speaking, but nobody really owns speaking. And the people that do own it, they're good. They're not, in my opinion, great. And so I think we can take over and own the entire speaking industry. So and I think I've got a mind. I'm a Scorpio, and I've got a mind like of a think 20 moves ahead, and I can see things, and I can be slightly vindictive. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I don't do some things that I could do, but I can see a clear path for me to kind of carve out something here. And also I get to piggyback. I got a testimonial from Tony Robbins, who's kind of the GOAT in the industry.
Big
And
time.
I got 14 years mentorship under him. So I've got a strong position, 9 figures, but even aside from all of that, I tell you this, I read this book years ago. Anthony something, I forget his name, but I think it's called Eat Their Lunch, and it's for salespeople. And if you're in B2B sales, and how to basically ethically take clients from other people. I read that book years ago, and it was just like, if you really focus on it and you provide enough value, number one, and you really understand relationship, communication, follow up, you can basically take anybody's business, anybody. And that book, I remember reading that years ago. And not that just because you can doesn't mean you should, for everybody listening. But I thought about it, and I think it's worth reading for everybody here to at least understand. And I think it would get anybody out, that mindset would get you out of a inferior position where it's like, I can be lethal if I dedicate the time, and if I care, and if I have the process. Like, there's nobody that's not reachable. Now, it might not be worth your time. Now, it might not be something you want to do, but you can. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. But if you have this mindset of really attacking business and knowing that you can, and then really evaluating your day, like, where's the best use of my time and what do I feel like doing? Like, it's just about empowering. And I think a lot of times in salespeople, they have a begging mindset and an approval seeking, validation, trying to get something mindset, as opposed to being empowered. Like, I'm here serving people. I'm serving the world. I have something, and I'm here to influence people. Like, this higher level of what I have to give and serve, but also feeling empowered with what they have, and not feeling like a pest following up. Like, to really own themselves. It's there's some things in that book that I thought were useful.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you want to get in touch with us, go to the Closers Dojo on Facebook. This is a Facebook group, free Facebook group for anyone looking to sell or build a sales team. We do sales trainings in there. We share a lot of resources. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. And that book was called Eat Their Lunch. I'll write that down.
Yeah, Eat Their Lunch. Eat Their Lunch. It's worth it. It's worth it if you read it.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Fellow Scorpio here as well, 11/11.
Oh yeah, 11/12.
No way.
That's awesome.
No way.
Yeah,
There it is.
I got a few years on there, but
yeah,
one
couple of years.
day.
I'm reaching 40 at the moment, so a couple of years away now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm 46.
Man, you look good. You're looking good. The fountain of youth.
Yeah.
And
all that positive energy.
That's it. I think what you were saying around having, I guess, internal kind of conviction in yourself in what you're selling, but more so, it's not coming from a place of ego, not coming from a place of neediness, approval seeking, etc. Like, what you teach is a lot is internal. It's about being a person of influence to influence others, whether it's sort of speaking on stage, whether it's speaking to a person one to one. Do you have routines? What I'm interested with what you do now and what you have done in the past, whether it's study, routines, lesson, rules, rituals that you've got that kind of fill you up, that fill your cup.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, Tony being my mentor, a lot of it stuff I got from him, and I'm just coming back. Like I said, we got done 2:30 in the morning last night, his program. So I'm pretty fired up. He's a program, and you could probably find the bulk of it on YouTube. called Time of Your Life. And it's really just how he thinks about time. He owns 114 companies, collectively will do 8 billion this year. And just he owns sports teams now. Man, just the way that he thinks about time. And he grew up in like living in his car, like massive poverty. And it's just the way that he thinks about it, how he's evolved. And he says this too. Obviously, he learns from people that he's coached, like General Schwarzkopf for 6 American presidents, and how they run stuff and how he now coaches them. So it was cool to see that. But really thinking in terms of results and outcomes and purpose. So he's got this whole process called RPM, result focused, purpose driven, massive action plan. And it's like, what are you doing? What's the result? Because you can have a bunch of to-dos and it could be a bunch of calls, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. And a lot of times people will even take, like, say, their calendar, and you write down things on your calendar, calls, to-dos, things like that, in order to get control. But if you have too many things on there, you feel overwhelmed, and all the things that you have to do are controlling you, because now you have an emotional response from all the things that you once wanted to do are now like putting you at a disadvantage. And people lose sight of the outcome. So what's the result, like, for your life, for your business, for this call? What's the intent? What's the outcome? And it could be an emotional one. Like, I'm going to see my mom this week. I want to make, and she's got dementia, and it's easy for me to get frustrated, and I can be mean to her, but it's like, is that how I want her to feel? So what's my outcome to make her feel safe, supported? And so I realign myself with that. Is something as small as seeing my mom. And if you have an outcome, doesn't mean you'll always hit it, but if you have an emotional engagement towards that, you're more likely to. And because you know what you're shooting for, you're more likely to be able to steer and get creative around something that might be an obstacle. So result focus, purpose driven, the P, the purpose, the why is the fuel to help get you there. And then you have some ideas, you kind of game plan the steps. But as far as kind of prepping for my day, I used to do really elaborate morning routines and all of that, but I kind of just threw it away and just got to work. I'm a naturally a night person, but getting my body back in shape. I haven't worked out for a long time and I had some back issues, but now I just get up. I do mobility training every morning. Been phenomenal. Do some like yoga. It's awesome. And I do this something called a quadrinity check-in. As soon as I wake up in the morning, first thing I do, I've got like a little app, I've got some kind of guided meditations that I take myself through, a bunch of them in my own voice. There's your body. I check in with my body, because what my body feels one day might be different. And I could go down a rabbit hole with that, but I check in with my body, ask my body what it needs. I give gratitude for my body. I check in with my inner child, like my emotional self, like how I'm feeling. I check in with my intellect and my mind. And my mind, all of our minds, we think so much, we consume so much content. Like, what does my mind want? And I give it thanks for all the stuff that it processes. And then I connect with my spiritual self, like my higher purpose and this alignment to something bigger. And then kind of like if there was a fifth part too, my spirit guide. Like, if there was a guardian angel or somebody looking over me, like, what would be the advice? And if for the longest time I would go take myself through this guided meditation, I would walk to the edge of a shore, hop on a boat, take the boat about half a mile to an island, go on the island, walk through a jungle, go down these steps into like a little man cave. The door would open, and there's a dojo in there, and I would practice my speeches in this meditation. I would practice objection handling. I would practice, physical combat. I would think through my day and see things projected on the screen. And inside of that little dojo was an elder Native American man watching over me. And he was kind of my spirit guide, somebody just to watch over me and to feel guided. And so I take myself through this meditation, and I recently started going back to, as soon as I wake up in the morning, this is what I do. I check in with the parts of myself. I feel guided. I ask for higher guidance, and I visualize things in my day that are performance related, and I see myself doing them perfectly. So that's how I start my day. And
Love that.
that's what I did this
did you
morning.
do Hoffman?
The Hoffman Institute.
The Hoffman
Yeah.
process. Yeah, I did the Hoffman. So I many years ago
Wow.
now, many
The
years ago.
quadrinity
The
check-in.
quadrinity, yeah. So I
Then
learned
you,
about the quadrinity. I went through the whole. There was like an 8-day immersive program with a lot of silence, a lot of
that's
cathartic.
exactly.
It's freaking amazing, man.
Yeah. Where did you do that?
In
California?
Byron Bay.
And
Byron Bay.
they have it there.
Yeah, they've got it here in Byron.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude,
How good.
I, obviously I've done everything. I've done everything Landmark Forum. I've done everything. I've done everything. The Hoffman experience, the Hoffman process, dude, isn't that awesome?
It's life changing, totally life changing for me as well. I was in a spot where my business was struggling. This would have been 2015, maybe 2015. So business was struggling.
Wow.
My relationship that I had, had gone through breakup, and at the time I had a lot of issues with approval seeking and feeling good when things were going well, but also when things weren't going well, I was like, it would destroy me. And so I'd be really rattled by external events. And so went through this breakup, caused me to sort of really assess things and think about what do I need to fix and what do I need to focus on to be a better leader. To my business was the results of my business were also showing up as how things were showing up internally. And you know, I was going to go to Bali, and I booked a trip to Bali to go, and I was going to go away for a month and just hang out. And then I started Googling spiritual development or personal development retreats. And I came across Hoffman, so just from a Google. And I remember just thinking, man, I need to do this. Jumped in, and we sat in the room. The first sort of introduction, there was probably about 30 people. We sat in the room in a circle, a chair circle, and the first question was the way we were going to introduce ourselves was, you had to say, "Hey, I'm name, and I'm in pain because," and you had to share the pain. And so from there, it set the tone just of what we were in for. And I had no idea. A lot of people had gone there because they'd been sort of referred by their psychologist or had been studying it for a long time. I just literally Googled. It was on in 2 weeks. I was there, and then it was deep, but totally life changing. But I haven't kept it up as you with routine.
Yeah. I just got back maybe 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's fresh for me.
Wow.
And I saw what Tony did, and I've gone to all this self-development stuff. And the self-development industry, it was for transformation. And now with coaching and marketing and sales and business stuff, it's a lot of people that are in the self-development coaching space. They're not coaches. To coach people, it's like you want to help them with their life, but now being a marketing coach or being a sales coach is not really coaching. And that was kind of what I brought to it. And me and my business partner, Eli Sanchez, like people like, oh, I did so-and-so's course. Now I understand. And we really want people to get it and to understand where they're blocked within themselves as to where they're insecure or have fear. And I've got in September, it's Matt Ryder, Taylor Welch, some famous Navy SEAL guy, Will Hinkinson, Dean Corey. We got this sales con here in Miami. It's going to be awesome. We're going to do this every year. It's going to be really big, but I want to do kind of my own UPW, like a Tony Robbins transformation event just for salespeople. And before they come to the event, they'll get sales scripts, their role play, and then I'll bring people on stage and I'll role play with them, and they'll know what to say. And to say, hey, I can't afford it. Well, do you think this actually can help you? Or whatever their objection handler, of course, is. Or we go through parts of the call, and I'll get into and I'll show them where they're insecure, where they're fearful, and I'm like, here's my experience of you. Or here, where they have something from their childhood that is affecting their power in this conversation. So we want to do real transformational work just for business and salespeople, people who are making offers and asking for money, like in the marketplace, getting rejected, and seeing how they're triggered in that. So I want to do some of the healing childhood therapy work for business people. So it's going to be awesome. Probably we're going to do SalesCon, and I think I'll be able to piggyback off of that, like a deeper level 4-day training, something relatively small, like like a 30-40 person thing, where we take people very similar to Hoffman and some of the, like, I won't go into it too much, but kind of like how you the expression stuff, the release of anger. Because I know for me, I was a top salesperson for Tony, and I have like 50,000 high ticket sales just for him. And then on the weekends when I wasn't selling for Tony, I was selling 40, 50, $60,000 offers at the back end of other people's events, real estate and business coaching. I mean, that's all I did. Like, I just obsessed with it. Front of the stage, back of the stage, everything. But at Tony's events, I loved it so much. And I'd be there, and I was usually most cycles the top salesperson for years. But one of the primary emotions that I felt at those events was shame, because it was so great. And I wished I had got more people. And in my mind, man, I wish that person, I didn't overcome that objection, or I should have done more. And I felt, like part of my emotional home was shame. And part of that drove me to want to work harder. But it's a different feeling than being proud, and you're more attractive and you're more light and there's less force. And so I recognized in myself a lot of dark emotions that push me, to work harder, but that's different than being pulled towards something. And it's all enveloping and it's attractive and it's magnetic when you're expanded in your actions, expanded in your training. And so it's taken me years to kind of recognize that from my own childhood and where I picked up some of that, like the need to prove myself.
Mm.
And you can prove yourself to a certain extent, but it's a force. And so we want to create transformational events specifically for sales and business people, where they do like a firewalk on the first day, like a board break, like all that stuff. And it's not about the firework or the board breaking itself. It's the meaning they attach to it, because this breakthrough can lead them to something, but it's the association. And I'll hypnotize them and everything and take them to some deep inner work so they create that association for themselves. Like, it's going to be awesome. So this has been one of my dreams for a long time. And I've got a few people that I've connected with that are deep into the transformation world, not the coaching or the sales world, that really want to help people, or they're going to help me facilitate this. So it's been a thing on my brain for a while. And just recently I've got the right people on the boat to help me put this together. So yeah, man, I'd love that you did Hoffman. That
Excited
type
for
of
that.
stuff
Yeah.
is game. And I want to do it specifically for sales and business people.
How good? How good? Well, sign me up. So let me know when it's going to be running. I've got a 9-month-old now, so travel is a bit hindered. So we need to be a bit more. We're about to head over to Fiji, then we're going to Europe with a 9-month-old. So I'll test out the how it goes with the baby. But who knows? We might be able to come over to Miami and get stuck in.
Nice, nice. Yeah, there's an event here in a couple of months, the Sales Con, but I've got a few events I know I need to go to in Europe. And I get invited to Australia. I guess I don't know why. That the last podcast that I was on just 2 hours ago, I just got off one. Was an Australian. A lot of Australians, Ryan Tuckwood.
Yeah, swish.
He's got his thing over there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, everybody give me an Australia. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe this is it. Maybe
100%.
it's God's talking. Go to Australia and do a firewalk. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
get
be cool.
here.
If you ever come over here, yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff down there. But yeah, we're gonna do some big stuff here first because it's easier. But Australians love learning from Americans. They love it for some reason.
They love
Like
it. They go buy the
it's
tickets.
Australia.
They get the tickets. They pay for the mastermind in US dollars, which is a lot more. Which it means that we're paying a lot more. And then for all the mastermind events, you get on the flight. You sort of over in the States. So it's a big commitment. So I think Australians, when we want to learn, we need to really commit because it's a bigger investment typically. But there are a lot of good Aussies that fully commit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good guys down here in the industry. So we'd love to see you come over.
Yeah, at some point, our marketing agency's down there. Those guys.
Charlie, I know
Jeremy
Charlie.
Miner.
Yeah,
Yeah, they run our ads. So yeah, it keeps on coming up. There's just too many cool Australians. I know so many.
that's true. Well,
Got to make it happen.
we look forward to having you and hosting. Well, man, we're coming up to time, but I wanted to just, I guess, ask, because we train salespeople of all sort of levels. A lot of new guys coming into the space. A lot of people moving out of their careers, looking to earn more money, like you said. Because in sales, if you're good, you're getting paid more than most careers, most other really specialized niches that people have gone to university for years to learn. What's a takeaway? What's something that if you were getting into sales, what would you focus on if you were starting again? You hadn't sort of had all the experience, but you have the knowledge. What would you focus on now in terms of a training, in terms of a focus for your process as a new salesperson?
It's a new salesperson. Well, I'd find an offer that I really believe in, and we have a partner company, that committed coaches thing that uh, it is just blown up. First $1 million a month, and it's relatively new. But it's a fitness offer, and I'm going to get on. They have too many leads. They have, I think, it's something like, I don't know, like 90,000 buyer leads a month. It's insane. It's just a rocket ship. And so because there's so many leads, we're gonna start doing group presentations, and I'm gonna start just doing some because I love selling one to many, and I'll get to test some new things. But yeah, I would find something you're passionate about, and it's of course relationships, business, health, whatever it is. But finding something like finding a really narrow niche that you can sell in that you're passionate about, like that you could talk about. Because as people, and it's not been so much in the high ticket space, but this was always the thing, like expert knowledge, like being able to talk the language. Like if you're in B2B selling a SaaS product, you want to be able to speak that language, like to be able to for the prospect to tell, hey, this person's knowledgeable about the thing. But if people just hopping on high ticket offers, you don't want to be knowledgeable about like women's fitness and being selling an offer for like marketing. Like you can't be, you might be knowledgeable about all those things, but I would find one thing where I would know more or as much as my prospects because I was so interested in it. And now there's nobody that I can't hang with as far as like influence, NLP, framing, hypnosis. Like I really went deep down that rabbit hole, but I'm passionate about it. And I know more than I would never need to, but I'm super passionate about it. So I can speak and I can handle that. So if I was starting somewhere, I would get really clear on what I want to sell. Like what could I talk about all day long and learn from my prospects where I was genuinely interested in talking to them about their business. And so that would be the start. And I think so much of the industry has gone to questions, whether people go to Jeremy stuff or Michael Oliver or whatever, which I think is useful. But I think it's just learning how to have basic conversations. And the number one influence book out there is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the magical skills are things like remember people's names, smile, like real mind-blowing stuff. But Warren Buffett says that changed his life. He said it was the most valuable thing he ever invested in was a Dale Carnegie course, and it is beyond basic. But a lot of salespeople that have so focused on the advanced linguistic objection stuff have lost
The
sight of the
basics.
fact that they're talking to humans, the basic stuff. And I'm like, that's a lot of it, being a basic human. And then the question becomes, how do you become a better basic human? How do you transfer belief? I would do some inner development work where you get really clear in who you are, what you want, why you want it, what do you believe? Because there's all this talk about like believing in your product, but do people really? But they don't really have a foundation for believing in anything. And so it's like the self-development work, going through things like Hoffman, going to Tony Robbins, going to Landmark Forum, going on all these processes. I think there is such uh, a connection between like badass salespeople and just badass people. At the Hoffman experience I went to, I'm good friends with Cole Gordon, and he's had some shifts in the company there with people doing other things. Like one of his right hand guy kind of is doing something else now, doing his own thing. And I found a girl at Hoffman, and she'd be a good number two for like a Fortune 500 company. She's maybe like 31 years old, so relatively young. But this woman was so badass, and how she showed up at that event, I was like, "Who are you?" She's so amazing, and she was just a natural born leader. And when I left Hoffman, she was headed back to New York, and we were in deep in Connecticut, and it was a 3.5 hour Uber ride. She was going to take a train. I said, let's just take an Uber. I'll pay for it. I'll just ride you just so we could talk. And I just, she's become a friend. And I was like, we're going to work together in some capacity, but I'm going to connect her to Cole just because she was so developed as a person. She's not even in sales. And I was like, she would be a good number two for an organization. And so I want to make that connection because of who she is. And you can have a skill, you can learn a skill, but it's like if you're not the person. But if you're the person, somebody will see you and say, hey, I want to develop you with this skill. Because it's like it's that with Tony, he liked who I was, and I got the skill because I didn't have the skill. I had the hunger, I had the drive, I had the intent, I had the integrity and the belief in the ethos and the passion and the mission for what he was doing, but I didn't have the skill. And so I think it's the self-development. And that's what I started with. And I think more people need to go back to that because they're so reliant on the skill. And so if I was starting now, um, and I would connect with as many people as possible. And what I would do what I did when I was selling with everybody else, there was meetings that nobody else wanted to take. I heard Tony say this. He said that he would run every meeting because he just wanted the reps. And I knew even if I didn't get sales, I was getting reps. And so I wanted to have full calendar. I wanted to do all the impossible things that were really uncomfortable. because I just wanted reps. And I know when you're starting out, you hear these people talk about how things aren't going well. It's like you're an awesome person. You have an awesome product. Like it's pretty good. It could be better, yes, but you just don't have enough reps. And if you're getting into the high ticket space, if you're getting reps on somebody else's account, they paid for marketing. It costs them sometimes $1,000 to book that call. If it's, ad, show up rate, webinar registration, call booked, show up rate, like all these factors come in. The call costs the entrepreneur $1,000. You better not fuck up that call. And so you need more reps, but you're probably not going to get reps when you're green. So find something, a great thing too, as cheesy as it sounds, network marketing. I was never into network marketing, but you have to go out there and it's a lot of rejection. It's really hard. And it's never been easier to start your own business, working for somebody or, initially doing something on the side, could be a service, could be something. But I would just figure out a way to get out there and have as many conversations as possible. Because initially, the first 100 conversations, you're just going to do weird, awkward things. And I tell people too, when I've coached them on speaking, I'm like, put yourself on video. Like if you're doing sales coaching, or if I'm coaching you in sales, take one of your recordings, watch yourself. Like you don't need me to coach you to tell you that was dumb. You can watch yourself and you can watch yourself speak and you're fidgeting, you're all over the place. You don't need a coach to tell you half the things you just said make no sense. Like you need to watch yourself and say, hey, that made no sense. Like these are obvious things. You don't need a coach for that. You need more repetition and intensity and proper planning and review. You need more time and then come to me. Like I don't want to tell you to do basic stuff. Like you don't need somebody to pay for that. You might need a mindset coach to give you the discipline and the foresight and the outcome that you're shooting for, or maybe help you figure out what you want. But you don't need feedback from me, on these things that are common sense. But as they say, common sense isn't always common practice. And so people need to get better at the basics with all this stuff. So if I was starting off today, I would find an offer in an industry that I really aligned with, and I would go all in. That's what I did with Tony. I saw that guy and I said, I'm all in. I'm not letting this go. And I would find somebody that I feel like I can learn from and something I was passionate about.
That was amazing. That advice is, powerful for new salespeople. They'll take a lot from that. The committed coaches thing. One of my guys has just started working on that offer. Actually, one of my students.
Yeah. It is a rocket ship. It's been awesome. Boom.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, man, Eli, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for hopping on. I know you haven't had a lot of sleep, and you're powering through, and I think you've got a lot of calls till late in the evening tonight, coaching calls.
I got a call right now with a lady that wants me to speak at her event. And then my coach and I are writing a chapter of my book tonight, right after. So I'll go straight till 10, 3 more hours, and then I'll sleep.
I think you must you be eating the same stuff that Tony's eating to have those long, powerful sessions. You guys, you must have learned a lot from him.
And before I go to bed, I'll work out. So that's my day.
Committed. Well, man,
What a man.
Thanks so much for coming on, and man, we'll keep track and watch things as they progress.
Sounds good, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
You too, man.